So my name is Antwi Akom, and I am faculty at UCSF in the medical school, where I direct a joint research lab on social innovation. I'm a professor at San Francisco State University as well, in the only college of ethnic studies in the country. That's something to cheer about. And I'm also the CEO and co-founder of a startup called STREETWYZE, and the other co-founder, Ekta Shah, is right there in the back. Ekta, raise your hand. So I want to start off by saying that we can't really have a summit on poverty and technology and opportunity and big data without addressing what I perceive as some of the elephants in the room that we've been avoiding. And I think Leanne and others have started to talk about them. But one of the elephants in the room that I just want to unearth is really what I refer to as the new Jim Crow. And I'm not talking about Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, which is really about the growth and the development of the prison industrial complex. What I'm speaking to as the new Jim Crow is the racialized and gendered and sexual orientation nature of access to capital and access to assets and building of assets in low-income communities and communities of color, and particularly for Black and brown innovators, right? And this is arguably one of the greatest challenges, civil rights issues of our lifetime, right? Right along with climate change and income inequality. And yesterday we heard about education as a pathway out of poverty from Nicole and Alex and Anant and John and others. But if we want to really build pathways out of poverty and an accelerator out of poverty that leverages the power of technology, then America must shed its reluctance to invest in Black and brown innovators. Not everybody is clapping. I'm wondering why. I see you. It's like, don't make me call you out. So the numbers are stark and they speak for themselves, right? In 2011, and these are old numbers, more than 300,000 angel investors wrote checks for $22 billion, right, to support over 60,000 companies. But statistically, there were zero Black and brown investors. And what this means is that there's very little money going to Black and brown innovators. And why is this important? I think Raj Chetty's work speaks directly to this, right? Yesterday, Raj spoke about how high-ability children are much more likely to succeed if they are well-resourced. And of course, the same thing goes for high-ability Black and brown innovators, right? We're much more likely to succeed if we are well-resourced. So what can be done about this? So to me, the real challenge of the 21st century is how do we reimagine and redefine our cities for communities that have been locked out of smart cities conversations, locked out of shareable city conversations, locked out of social justice conversations, locked out of sustainability conversations. Will we redesign our cities for rich people or for poor people? For people of color or for white folks? For eco-haves or eco-have-nots? And who will have a say in how we redesign our cities of the future? Powerful elites or everyday people? And to me, the Fed and HUD and the EPA and cities, schools, mayors who are the real change makers at the city level, some of them, we have not correctly identified the problem, okay? I think that we've done a brilliant job on the left-hand side. Those entities have done a brilliant job of setting top-down, ambitious goals for the design of the built environment, right? And I refer to that as the hardware. But what about what Brittany was talking about yesterday? What about the software, the power of place, our lived experience, what people know to be happening on the ground level every day, right? And so the real challenge of the 21st century data revolution then is how do you bridge this gap between official knowledge, right, the top-down stuff, the big data stuff, and local knowledge, right, in ways that make data more authentic and meaningful and valid and reliable from the perspective of everyday people. Now, I'm going to give you just a quick example of what I mean by software. This is a picture of my mom. I grew up in a single-parent, female-headed household that was led by, to me, the most beautiful, loving, caring, nurturing woman in the world. Let's cheer for my mom, just for the sake of it. But we weren't that well off, but we got even poorer when my mom got lupus and was forced to retire early. And the truth be told, the only way that we were able to struggle and survive and make ends meet was to get connected to food and finance and cars and those essential things that you need in life through our social networks, friends, family, and word of mouth. And I mentioned Roy Austin here because he and I grew up together. Some of this he doesn't even know, that my mom was relying on his parents, he was a little bit younger than me, as a social network to get through those really tough times. And this is a picture before I got to Pennsylvania, where Roy and I grew up. I was in New York. And this is a picture of the project that I grew up in New York. And through my own lived experience, because my mother was forced to declare bankruptcy, with bankruptcy and poverty, I found that the way that local data in general and the way that social services in particular in this country are delivered is broken, ineffective, and not efficient. And this is how I found my own life's calling. And I want to be really clear what I'm suggesting to all of you right now. I'm saying that poor people and people of color around the world, we invented the sharing economy. But the way that the sharing economy is corporatized, the way that it's commercialized, the way that it's commodified, is that everyone knows that where the ghetto, where the barrio, where the res, where rural poverty begins, is the same place where bike share and car share end, right? And we've got to change that. Now, technology is supposed to fix all this, isn't it? But some of our leading tech companies have had very little penetration in low-income communities and communities of color, or with rural poverty. And what this means is that the fastest-growing demographics in the fastest-growing places in the world, I'm talking about those, the hood, the barrio, the favela, right? There's very little data about what's going on in these communities, and they don't have mobile platforms that allow them to connect to cities, services, businesses, and each other until now, right? So for the last 5 years, Ekta and I and our whole team have been working with communities about what works, what doesn't work, and what can be improved, from folks who have been locked out of the access to opportunity conversation, folks who have been locked out of the access to goods and services conversation. For example, 70% of Yelp users are white. You may or may not have known that. Very little penetration. Same thing with Nextdoor, around those similar kinds of numbers. Right? And so what we've done is built a culturally and community responsive technology, right, that's multilingual. And the problem isn't that poor people and vulnerable populations don't have the resources. The bigger problem is that poor people and vulnerable populations we know exactly what's going on, but no one's asking us, right? So the truth is, we in this room oftentimes think we are the experts, or we think big data alone can solve the problems, when the truth of the matter is that the people who know the answer are the people who live, lurk, pray, and play in the community, right? So DJ Patel calls this local data, and what I call community-generated big data as the new frontier. And StreetWYZE bridges that gap by combining big data with community-generated data, and we've built a mobile mapping and SMS platform that collects real-time experience about how people are experiencing cities and services. Now, this is how it works. Our platform allows folks to find goods and services, to rank the quality of those goods and services, and to connect and share those goods and services. I'm going to skip a few slides because I want to honor the time. But I'm pissed, Elizabeth, that you didn't give me more time, but I'll come back to that later. So this is how our platform works. What you're looking at, and this is exactly what Mayor Schaaf would look at, is an open data set from Oakland, California. And those purple dots are supposedly the number of grocery stores that there are in East Oakland. So according to the open data, East Oakland looks like a veritable food oasis. But when you use StreetWYZE data and you ground truth that information, what you find out is that most of those are liquor stores or corner stores, and only a handful of those are actually grocery stores. And you can upload pictures and audio and video. You can integrate social media, which is critical when you're trying to reach low literacy, I see you, when you're trying to reach low literacy populations. Now imagine if you could use our platform to produce a community-driven map of hate crime in real time, which we started to talk to yesterday with Roy and Clarence. Or imagine if we could take DJ Patel's data set and Dave and Mark and others, and we could start to view opportunity and layer real-time data into access to opportunity. Well, you don't have to imagine it too much, because we've already started this process with enterprise community partners, the largest affordable housing provider in the country. STREETWYZE will be powering the new Opportunity Index, which looks at real-time housing data, evidence-based assessment framework, open source data, and a community engagement model. Our success is we've launched, we are currently in private beta. We've launched in several cities across the country. We are part and honored to be a part of the White House Opportunity Project. We are a platform provider for 100 resilient cities, and we are launching across the 12 eco-districts. I'm going to skip this stuff, but this is some of the press about us. Our user engagement has been very strong. A 7% user growth week over week, which is the same as Twitter and Facebook and others are getting. And finally, the market opportunity is large. Right? We talked about this earlier. Jay talked about this, a $100 billion market in the United States. We're really looking at a $1 trillion market. But most importantly, the global impact is really quite significant around the number of lives that we could change with this platform. Join us in building a new data revolution that begins to integrate local knowledge with official knowledge to build equitable communities for everyone. Thank you for your time.